what just happened? Or I'm sensing a shift here.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a shift here. No one's going to say it like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sensing a shift here. Help me understand, what you're feeling or what you're thinking. Again, if you are being neutral and then creating a safe space of opportunity, it gives them, they have to think about it. Like, don't label it and think about it for them. Let them do the work.
Yeah.
So, this is all, with Chris, it's all like, let the other person do the thinking and the talking, say as little as possible.
While we're at it, first of all, again, appreciate everyone on Spotify. I'll just kind of give one last story. This happened, I think, last year, or might have been 2 years. These past 3 years have been bunched up so much. It's kind of unfortunate. There was a neighbor. I guess he really enjoyed the company of me and my other friend. So one time we were going to go get ramen. He wanted to invite, I think this was one of his people he really looked up to. Like, this was a friend, but like he didn't really know him for too long even, but they met at all these meditation guru retreats. So he really wanted us to meet him. We're having ramen. This fourth guy that he was trying to introduce us to, I don't even think this guy like even introduced himself to us. If you're the fourth person being brought into a social situation where the other three know each other, maybe that third person that was supposed to bring you in should have been the one really to like bring you in. It's not required, right? People who are socially smooth, like Chris Voss, will just naturally be able to, make it work. But maybe sometimes the fourth person wants to be brought in a little more. But he was not really brought in. But me and my friend, the non-woo-woo, non-like super into meditation friend, we were trying to bring the fourth person in. But what ended up happening was that fourth person would just only talk to the third person, the person who knew us a little bit more. They just talk amongst themselves. And then sometimes we try to bring them in. Wouldn't happen. Sometimes we try to interject in their conversation. It wouldn't happen. So the whole ramen session was the most awkward thing, where 80% of the time it was two conversations. And I looked at my friend, and then my friend's also, he's very weird, so I know he's picking up on this. I wish I had like a word, like I'm sensing there's a shift, or I'm because the shift was in the beginning. There's another word I could have used. I'm sensing, like something like
A
there's
disconnect.
yeah, a disconnect. Yeah, I'm sensing a disconnect here. I just didn't know how to phrase it because my personality naturally, especially if it gets that awkward, I want to call it out immediately. But the fourth guy, and this is why it relates to trauma, it seems like he has gone through some trauma. It's not the trauma that probably I can relate to because he's a very, very rich kid. So they have their rich kid traumas, not to say it's any less. It's just different. So it's hard for me and my friend's, he's from a working class Latino family. So it's hard for me and him to understand it. But the third guy, the guy that we were friends with, was trying to bring this guy into our group, he's a extreme rich kid, right? He's like a third generation, a fourth generation wealth kid. So like, they don't need to work. So they have different types of charm. That's why they go to meditation retreats all the time, because they can afford going to like $7,000 like 2-week meditation retreats. So there's a disconnect. I love what Aya said, but I wasn't able to phrase it. So I remember we still celebrated the win because there was one moment where suddenly there was a coinciding of conversation topics, and for like 5 minutes we talked together. It was, of course, about conspiracies. Conspiracies can bond anyone, poor to rich, whatever, right? And then it split off in its own. And it got to the point where, so after the ramen, we each paid. They still sort of wanted to hang out with us. They're like, "Oh, you want to get ice cream together?" My friend and I was like, "Oh, no, we're headed out." Break down the awkwardness and the dissociation. Maybe this guy was dissociating the whole time. Maybe he's not used to like interacting with like non-upper social economic class white people, right? So that in itself can create like a disassociation. Maybe he doesn't even realize it, because if he's hung around people all his life who like, oh yeah, you want to go to Mexico for a week, let's do it. And then like you suddenly meet people who can't do that. They have to think about money. That in a way, it's like, it's triggering in a different way than what we would usually use the word triggering, right? So maybe there's that type of disassociation. But on top of that, the guy was dealing with a lot of mental health issues. So there is a potential, maybe in the past, when he would talk to people about mental health issues, people would dismiss him or not give him a supportive ear. That's why maybe he was afraid to open up to us. But he was opening up to his friend in front of us, just not talking to us. You are opening up and like not including us. That's in a way even more awkward. We've all experienced mental stuff. This is part of the 21st century. We're more apt to talk about it. My friend was trying to give him like tips that worked for him. And of course, this guy just automatically just kind of like the situation with my friend who couldn't understand what MCAT was, automatically started relating it to going to talk to girls. And my friend just cringed in his head. Like, he's depressed. He doesn't know how to interact with people. So my friend's like, one thing that's worked for me is, hey, sometimes just practice saying hi to people. And so this guy, the fourth guy, immediately is like, yeah, and somehow he related to talking to girls and like online dating. And my friend just immediately just like, okay, I don't want to give this guy advice anymore. Like, you can't even introduce yourself to a group right now that you're in. How are you going to go like make girls feel comfortable? There was definitely a lack of awareness. There was a lack of social intelligence, a lack of emotional intelligence, and unfortunately a social economic class divide. There was so much going wrong in that conversation. And then the dude was a good looking dude, but he seemed to have problems bonding with people, and like he seemed to want his way. That's our perception, right? He seemed to want his way the whole time, because the whole time he was only talking about himself, even to the friend that was trying to introduce us to him. So like, it seemed a little psychopathic, as much as maybe it was just disassociation. So we gave him a nickname. You know, we're flawed. I'm gonna admit to this. We started calling him American Psycho. You know, he's so into himself. Everything's about himself. His trauma's about himself. The friend that was trying to introduce him to us, he was so unaware how awkward it is. A few days later, I saw him. He's like, oh, remember our friend? Didn't you like him? And I told him honestly, because I don't hold back. I'm like, you know, that guy was like American Psycho. And he's like, oh, what? How could you say that about? And I explained to him, like, yeah, the guy the whole time was talking about himself. Like, he never once tried to introduce himself to us or get to know us. He just wanted to talk about himself. The third guy, the guy who was trying to introduce us to American Psycho, for lack of a bad word, started going all this energy circle route, like really trying to go around, which isn't effective, right?
In certain situations, like, yes, I think dissociation is how you could label it. But, you know, then it goes into things of like choosing to not be aware, right? And I find it fascinating that they met in a meditation class or wherever, you know, like
Yes!
that's right. So this again, you know, this is like some classic LA stuff where it's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Classic
cool.
LA.
You know, yeah, which is, you know, a whole nother thing. But again, it's the awareness. You could go to the meditation, but if you are not implementing what you're learning, then you'll just be caught in the same spiral. It's like people that are like, I got all these self-help courses and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, but you have to implement, and that's where the difficulty is. And so I think, you know, that's another thing that we could talk about is what it means to do the work, because you can get all the information, but if you are not doing the work, you are going to be that guy. And again, it just couldn't be more ironic that they met in a meditation class.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you picked up on that, because I didn't even emphasize that, but that was the first thing for a while me and my friend talked about. It's like these two met at a meditation class, and they're the most into meditation we can imagine, and they weren't even aware in a social situation. What the heck?
Suspect.
Yeah. Suspect.
Yes.